Right. Good morning, everyone. It's just after 10 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. Hopefully you can see the slide and not my notes or anything like that. It's a bit confusing with the different screens here, but if there's any issues, um, give me a message or there's a chat open or just an emoji or something like that. Right, so this session will be recorded, and after today, we will send out these slides to everyone that was registered for the webinar. A few requests popped up to record the meeting through AI from some participants, so I declined those because we will share this recording on YouTube and send out the slides as well. All right, so this is the information webinar about SHRF's solutions program. I'm Karen Tilsley, Director of Programs and Partnerships at SHRF. And I wanted to begin today by just acknowledging that we are on traditional lands known as Treaty 6 territory and homeland of the Métis. I have the privilege of living in this city in Saskatoon, where we're all beneficiaries of this peace and friendship treaty. At SHRF, we recognize and reaffirm our commitment to reconciliation, and we hope that the work we do and the funding initiatives we offer will continue to support researchers, partners, community members across the province in their important work to address health disparities and support Indigenous health in meaningful ways, incorporating Indigenous ways of knowing and traditional knowledge. So for the webinar today, I'll talk, I've got a lot of content to cover and we'll leave some time for questions at the end. So I'll just, for those who aren't familiar with SHRF, I'll give a brief overview, talk about the funding that's available for the Solutions Program this year, talk about the different grants, who can apply, and how you apply, how to decide which opportunity to apply for. At the end, I'll go over some key takeaways and application tips, and then we'll have some time for questions. So first, I'll just start off by giving a bit of an overview of who SHRF is. So we're a team of 10 located in Saskatoon. Our staff supports our functions for the board, our funding programs, finance, evaluation, and communication. We have an annual budget of 4.8 million, and we're supported through the Government of Saskatchewan through Innovation Saskatchewan. And we work with provincial and national partners to support more research in Saskatchewan. So SHRF has been around for 24 years now, and we have that legislated mandate to support human health research taking place in Saskatchewan. So this includes research from a wide variety of fields and disciplines. So it could be looking at areas, for example, as developing new treatments for diseases, strengthening the healthcare system, or other initiatives, programs, policies, approaches that improve the health of people in Saskatchewan. So we organize our investments in research in 4 overarching programs with different purpose within each of those. And we offer different grant opportunities that have their own specific application process, review criteria, and objectives within those. If you've ever applied for SHRF funding, you've probably interacted with members of our programs team here. So that's myself, the Director of Programs and Partnerships. Tanya Scorbahatch supports our work in all aspects as the Program and Peer Review Coordinator. Pawan leads the Capacity Program and is the Peer Review Manager. And Chelsea leads the Connections Program and leads our engagement initiatives for funding. So we all work really closely together to deliver these programs. And if you're not sure who to talk to, don't worry, we talk to each other all the time, and we actually have a shared inbox that I'll put that information up at the end. So I'm the main contact for the Solutions Program, which is why I'm leading this webinar today and why you're here. So the Solutions Program was developed when SHRF did a strategic refresh about 7 years ago, and it's really grown and evolved over the years, and our funding partners have been a major part in that. So we're really thankful to their dedication to supporting research and for collaborative solutions addressing Saskatchewan health challenges. So the Solutions Program is designed to bring the research ecosystem together around those pressing and timely health challenges. That includes SHRF's funding partners, it includes diverse perspectives, expertise, and different knowledge from different areas that can bring to bear for those health challenges. The program supports the development and implementation of timely solutions that respond to those needs with the goal of creating sustainable impact in those focus areas. And yeah, we hope that through those investments, we can create a sustainable and lasting impact in that focused area. So just a bit of a look back, since 2020, the Solutions Program has invested over $12 million in 114 grants. We've offered 8 different focus areas and engaged 9 funding partners who, through their contributions, have invested $3.7 million of that overall total. So the partnership has played a huge role in the success of this program. So I wanted to just get us all on the same page. What do we mean by a solution? I know there's different words get used in different ways in different communities. So from SHRF's perspective, and hopefully you'll see this, we should see this reflected all the way through the program guidelines, the review criteria, all the way through. But just to set things at a high level, a solution is something that responds to a gap, an unmet need or emerging health challenge. So being able to describe what the problem is and who does it impact. So the solution builds on existing evidence and uses relevant knowledge to shape a rationale for that solution. And it's grounded in the understanding of the needs of those who it's meant to benefit and those who could use it. A solution can describe its intended outcomes and impacts for those relevant audiences, and it looks to the future for further development, based on the results of the current project, of course, but where could it go and how could it make a difference in the long term for the focus area. So that's a really important thing to tie together, is that all of those aspects, so the need has to be in the context of that focus area, the audiences in that focus area, and the future impact in that focus area. So that's a really important thing to keep in mind with this program. So to meet the program goals, there's 2 different grant types that are offered within the program. They happen through the same call at the same time. So we were very intentional that to meet these program objectives, that teams needed to include knowledge users right from the beginning. There's lots of evidence demonstrating the importance of including knowledge users developing the solution, implementing the solution, and that really closes the gap on that, the research practice gap. So that's a key feature of the program. And then these 2 funding opportunities within it have different objectives, and that's really the important difference between them. You'll see they also have different terms and different amounts, but it's really the objective. So the innovation grant is for earlier stage research, and the amount is smaller because when we're trying new things out, it's a bit riskier. So we want to, get it done quickly and um, you know, yeah, smaller investment for those riskier um, new ideas. And if your team is choosing the impact grant, then that signals that you're building on some preliminary data in order to move a solution towards those practical and real world applications. Um, the program doesn't require you to come in at the innovation grant, then move to the impact. It's just the current proposal, which grant it aligns with. You might have been doing work supported by other resources or all kinds of combinations, or maybe you did one innovation grant and now you have a sort of a new pathway based on the results from that. So there's no defined way that it's just every call you have to select the innovation or impact grant based on the objectives of what you're proposing. So as I mentioned, the solutions program is really made possible by our partners. So 2 years ago, SHRF and Brain Canada came together to make brain health the focus of solutions in SHRF Solutions investments. And I believe Julia Segal is on this call. So thanks for joining us today, Julia, from Brain Canada. And then our longstanding partners in the province, Jim Pattison Children's Hospital Foundation, and the Alzheimer's Society of Saskatchewan, uh, who have been working with us, decided to come together under this brain health area with relevant funding pools and really increase their investments. So that's been that altogether, it's created significant investment in brain health and some defined pools for pediatric brain health and Alzheimer's disease and other dementias. We've partnered with LungSask for many years to support lung health research in Saskatchewan. And we continue with that this year. And then we have a new partner this year. Prostate Cancer Foundation of Canada is a relatively newly national funder. And so they are bringing some national funding to Saskatchewan using the Solutions Program as that mechanism. So that's an exciting new partnership. And we're so grateful for all our partners entrusting us with their resources, donor contributions, and really believing in investing in research in Saskatchewan and coming together on the Solutions Program. So this table shows the funding available. So those focus areas that were on the previous slide, each of those has its own funding envelope. So when you're applying, your application has to be relevant to one or more of the focus areas listed for the current competition. So it might be relevant to more than one, and that just increases the number of envelopes that your application is eligible for funding. So how this works is at eligibility, we automatically consider your application for all the relevant focus areas. We share that information with partners, and they approve if it's relevant to the focus area, which is detailed in the application guide. So it's important to look at those descriptions in the application guide. And then at peer review, the funding is allocated in rank order within each funding pool that you see in this table. So really, you can think about it as applying with solutions. You're actually applying to multiple competitions at once. So one thing I want to point out is that this does lead to different success rates, depending, of course, on the demand within that pool. But also, if you are relevant for more than one pool, that would increase your chances. But I can tell you that overall, and in line with our goals for the program, we can typically fund about the top third of applications in the competition overall. And usually there's another third of applications that were recommended for funding through peer review. but that we aren't able to fund, leaving a funding gap. And some envelopes have lower success rates depending on how many applications are received. Um, and I wanted to point out that the prostate cancer focus area, we're just accepting innovation grants for this first year of the partnership. And the impact grant for lung health the eligibility is restricted to a strategic targeted focus area that is outlined in the application package. If your application is relevant to pediatric brain health, for example, or Alzheimer's disease, it would automatically be considered for funding under the brain health any area envelope that you see here. So the competition timelines, we released the application package on June 3rd. And you'll notice that we moved the application and eligibility check deadlines 1 week earlier compared to last year. And this is just due to the volume of applications and the time needed to recruit peer reviewers and go back and forth in speaking with partners about relevance. So just keep that in mind. And also in previous years, we'd indicated that eligibility was a rolling intake up until a certain date. To be honest, basically nobody took advantage of that option. So just to simplify things and simplify communication with partners, we've just set the one deadline. So you can reach out to us anytime to talk about your application and the eligibility, but everyone will go through from eligibility to full application following that September 10th deadline. Yeah. And so the full application is due November 5th to SHRF, and the funding start date and results are in March next year. If you'd like to read about projects that have been successful in funding, you can see them on our website. So in this next section, I'll just talk about who's eligible to apply, the team requirements, and the different application requirements. So one key element of applying for research funding to SHRF is that the principal investigator for the solutions program needs to meet the requirements that are outlined in SHRF's funding guide. So a principal investigator is someone who's autonomous in the research activities. So they're not a contracted employee, they're not a trainee. They have the freedom to publish their results without any restriction. They can hold peer-reviewed funding at their organization, and which has an MOU. I'll cover those on the next slide. And they must be based in Saskatchewan during the funding period of the grant. So SHRF has an MOU with these different research institutions in the province, and this is really important. Their institutions are key partners in stewarding SHRF funds, making sure that the research is follows ethical guidelines, safety guidelines, and that the funding is accounted for responsibly. So the affiliation with the MOU institution, this applies to the principal applicant specifically. So the co-applicants and other people involved don't have to be affiliated with one of these institutions on the slide. This is about the principal applicant that's going to hold the grant and be responsible for it. And this is also where policies around procurement and personnel would fall under the policies outlined by the principal applicant's host institution. So in making up a solutions team, there is a minimum requirement, and that is 3 individuals based in Saskatchewan. One of those is a researcher who meets the eligibility requirements for a principal applicant. We need a second researcher who brings a different disciplinary perspective and who's not a trainee, and a knowledge user who brings perspectives on the practical applications and knowledge generated through the proposed research. Um, so one question we get a lot is about the researcher affiliation. So departments and colleges are organized in really different ways. So there are cases where the two researchers are from the same department or college, but they're bringing different disciplinary perspectives. So the point is to bring those different viewpoints and skills to bear on the problem and the development of the solution. So that's really what we mean there. And the knowledge user, who that is, really depends on the research that's being proposed, and what's important is how that fits with your current project, based on the description there. Okay, so what is required from those team members? So in lieu of signatures from all the team members, the process in the SHRF application is that the principal applicant sends an invitation from the online system, and that when that person accepts the invitation, that is like their signature saying that they've, agreed to be part of the application. If people are having any trouble with that, acceptance, or if they have to set up a new profile and they're having trouble getting their organization in the system, um, just email us and we'll get back to you during business hours, and happy to help on any of those technical glitches. Um, Once the invitation is accepted, the system generates what's called a contribution form, and that has each person fill out their information, indicate the average number of hours per week, recognizing that that's can vary week to week, but an average, maybe over a month, for example, if you average that per week, and a brief description of their role in the project, so acknowledging what they are bringing to bear for the proposed research. And we also have each on the contribution form, depending on if the person is a researcher, a knowledge user, a person with lived experience, then they upload a profile document. So this is like a CV, essentially, but the SHRF template is more of a narrative format with suggested headings. So these contribution forms overall, including those profiles, are meant to demonstrate that the time and expertise is in place for the proposed project. It really speaks to the feasibility. And I'll just mention that these templates, the SHRF CV, it's more of that narrative format that we've been hearing for many years, and the tri-agencies have a new narrative format that is slowly being implemented at the national level. So ours has a few more headings, but yeah, if you're working with a specialist like a knowledge user, or somebody from outside the province even, what we're really looking for is the length and generally the suggested heading. So if if there's a 5-page bio sketch submitted for one of the applicants, we're not gonna remove it and ask you for a new one. So just please really use your judgment about what is most appropriate and what fits within the expectations, in particular, the page limits and the type of information that will speak to the feasibility of what you're proposing. So yeah, hopefully that gives a bit of context for what we're looking for there. So there are different roles that SHRF categorizes. So When we talk about co-applicants, those are individuals who contribute to the intellectual, cultural, or scientific direction of the project. So there are three types of co-applicants that are described as researchers, knowledge users, or people with living experience, and I'll get into those more on the next slide. So personnel are people that are involved in the project, but they're compensated from grant funds to carry out specific aspects of the project. So those are your trainees, your research staff, anyone else that's involved in that capacity. And supporters are individuals and organizations that have a limited or defined role in the project. They're not there from beginning to end, not overseeing its direction, and they have an interest in the proposed outcomes. Also mention that you can have co-leads. So in the system, they're identified as co-principal applicants. So everything in the instructions about co-applicants is the same, but when you add them as co-principal, that signifies they're in a leadership role similar to the PI, but not the main administrative contact. So the co-applicant categories that I mentioned. So SHRF defines a researcher as an individual with formal research training who currently holds a position that supports them to pursue research. So that's how we've defined it in the context of our applications. And a knowledge user is someone who's interested and brings perspectives of the applications of the knowledge generated from the proposed research. So and the person with living experience brings their personal experiences, having the health issue, interacting with the system, or as an informal caregiver. Somebody might, actually fit in all of these categories, but it's really about their role on the current team and the perspectives they're bringing to the proposed project. So when you're building your team, some things to keep in mind are the relevant expertise that you will need, and that each team member should have a clear role and their expertise tied into addressing the research question or the potential impacts. Building capacity, mentorship for trainees and early career researchers is an important thing that happens through research that SHRF funds and our partners. And people with living experience and knowledge users are there to ensure the research is appropriate, relevant to usable. And any other relevant supporters, so those might be health system decision makers, community leaders, organizations, industry partners, etc. Lots of different things could go here. Those individuals can indicate their support in that supporter role and providing a letter of support. Want to mention that it's the PI's responsibility to guide team members. And there you'll see a link at the bottom of a page that we've created that walks through the steps once you've invited them. There's videos, really, clear steps outlined. So that is kind of the first resource to use to support team members. Of course, if there's, you need some clarity, you think you have, maybe a unique situation, and obviously if you're having any technical difficulties, don't hesitate to, as the PI to reach out to us or have the individual team member reach out to us directly, whichever makes sense for you. And considering the applications this year, as a principal applicant, you are restricted to one application per year to the solutions program. So you would have to choose either the innovation or the impact. You can't have one in both. But you can be a co-applicant and even a co-principal applicant on other projects that are being submitted in this same call. We encourage reapplication. So if you've applied in a previous year, we encourage you to use the application form to respond to previous reviewer comments. indicate how you've addressed them or why you disagree with them, and that, clarify that. So yeah, that is often looked upon favorably within the committee when it's evident the applicants have really taken the time to respond in a thoughtful way to the reviewer comments and make the appropriate improvements to their application. If you've held a solutions grant, innovation, or impact in the past, you are welcome to apply to for either innovation or impact with a new project, either a new project or something that is, advancing from previous work. And your proposal should highlight how the progress from the previous grant. So, some things to think about when you're selecting innovation versus impact grant. As I mentioned, it's really about the objectives of those grants and the stage of the project, not about the timeline or bigger amount of the impact grant, for example. The focus areas, you only need to fit one, but if you fit multiple, then you'll be considered in multiple funding envelopes. That knowledge user, keep in mind who would implement the solution and how they're helping to inform the development of the solution in this application. So the first step is that eligibility check, and why we do that is to make sure before you've developed this whole application, we want to have this opportunity to make sure that your proposed research is relevant to the focus areas and that it's aligned well with either the innovation or the impact grant objective. So if we have questions about this, the eligibility check provides an opportunity to go back and forth. Partners might have questions and SHRF will bring those forward on their behalf. And yeah, so that just, there can be a conversation at that stage. And yeah, we want to make sure the principal applicant is eligible to hold funds. And it also really helps us make sure we have recruiting the right peer reviewers to form those multidisciplinary review committees to inform partners and have them confirm relevance. And then we record any things of note on the system so that any decisions that maybe need some context, they're recorded right on the application form where the reviewers can see as well. So to prevent any confusion or questions if there's anything, any certain circumstances. So for this eligibility, so the things you want to be thinking about at this stage is which focus area you're addressing and how, which grant, innovation, or impact is most suitable, who is on your team. So eligibility requires you to have the three team members identified, but you don't need to invite them at eligibility. But they, of course, should be aware that they are listed. And there's a spot for a draft title that can change later, but it just helps us understand the project, a brief overview of your planned research that's used to confirm relevance, and to assist in recruiting peer reviewers, and 3 suggested Canadian reviewers that are outside Saskatchewan. So these aren't necessarily people that we are going to recruit, but it can help us give good leads, can help us understand the expertise needed, and especially sometimes if we need extra external reviewers, those names can be really handy. So the committee formation takes in a lot of factors, and these suggestions are really helpful, but don't necessarily mean that they will be contacted. And you don't need to contact them by any means ahead of time. Yeah, I think I sort of touched on this. So the text that you're entering at the eligibility stage addresses the fit with the program. So specifically, what is the problem or need? What is the proposed solution? Is it novel or building on existing evidence? The audience that would benefit or implement the solution, and how the knowledge user will contribute. So those things will help us confirm that your application meets the overall purpose and objectives and team requirements. And then the proposed research overview outlines the topic and study population, the proposed objectives, and key methodology at a really high level. And that's used to make sure that we have the right reviewer expertise and yeah, that's the main purpose for the proposed research overview. So how do you apply? So there's some key resources. So everything that I've talked about today is in the solutions application package, and you can find that on our website. And all applications are completed through SHRF's research management system online at smartsimple.shrf.ca. So that application package contains a lot of information, and sometimes it tells you that there's more detail on a policy in SHRF's funding guide. So SHRF's funding guide is more applicable across programs. For example, defining what a principal applicant is. That's something you would find in the SHRF funding guide, or allowable expenditures that apply to all our programs. We keep those in the funding guide as more singular point of reference for those. And at shrf.ca/resources, you'll find some helpful videos, manuals that might be handy to support you in using the RMS or helping your team members use the RMS. So once you get into the RMS, so once you get past eligibility, to be specific, so after September submission, and if you're approved to go through, which is usually the case, sometimes after some back and forth. So the full application, all of these sections and all the requirements are completely outlined in the application package. So there's nothing surprise or secret in the RMS application form once you go through eligibility. So everything, if you read the application package, everything is in there. So I'll just highlight that the proposed project section asks for these different elements listed here. The innovation grant has a 6-page proposal attachment, and the impact grant has an 8-page proposal attachment. There's that spot, as I mentioned, to address previous reviewer comments. There is a spot for supplementary materials, but please really keep the reviewers in mind. Best case scenario is that you don't need to put anything in supplementary materials. But if you really feel there's something that is needed and didn't fit anywhere else, then that could be uploaded there. The budget section, so there's a 2-page budget justification PDF that you'll upload. And then the system uses these Excel templates. So how it works is you download the Excel template, but make sure you only edit the cells, not the headers or column labels, because then you upload it back into the system, and assuming you haven't changed anything in the headings, then the system can read it and populate the display on the table or on the application form. And if you need to make any changes, you just re-upload a new file, click Save Draft, and it'll repopulate that display however many times you need to. So there is that in that Excel template, there's 3 different sheets. So the proposed budget is related to the 50K or 150K available through the Innovation or Impact Grant. There's extra years on the template because it's the same file for it can be used for any program. So you just fill in the years. So if it's an innovation grant, you should only have values entered in year 1 on the sheet, for example. There's another sheet where you can show other cash or in-kind contributions from other sources that are needed to complete the project. And there's also a spot to show any potential overlap and to provide some commentary on that, and a spot to upload any documentation needed. For example, if you have a quote that is needed, that could be uploaded there. And just a reminder that the funding available through Solutions is must be spent in Saskatchewan. If you have team members or things happening in your project that are outside of Saskatchewan, then you would need to show resources in this other contributions table to support those activities. The next section is roles, and this information displays here based on the contribution forms that are filled out by each individual. So the PI has a spot to invite the person, which generates a contribution form, and that is showing, that's the numbers showing this display here. So for every contribution form, for every application that you're on, you would have a contribution form. So just keep that in mind if you're completing the contribution form, that it's for the right application. And those also show up on the for the principal applicant, so that you can coordinate, and the principal applicant can actually complete and submit contribution forms on the behalf of team members. It's really up to you to coordinate amongst the team to decide how to do that. And then there's an approval section where there's a signature page that needs to be signed by the PI's institution where the funding will be held. So that should be a signature from one of those MOU institutions that I showed earlier on. Okay, so we're just coming to some key takeaways and tips, and then we'll open up for questions. Yeah, just recap the importance of demonstrating the fit with the focus area, the innovation or impact grant objectives, and aligning the team expertise and experience to that proposed research, including the different methods that you'll be using, the analysis techniques, and the intended outcomes. Between eligibility and full application, you're welcome to add new team members. You can even change the original team members if needed, but of course we'll be checking your eligibility for the team requirements again at full application. So yeah, having one knowledge user on board at the eligibility stage, and using those resources to support them, such as the team member website. And eligibility, addressing the fit with the opportunity, the focus areas, and yeah, giving us goals and approaches of the project so that we can to support reviewer recruitment. Some tips just based on our experience over the years, kind of hearing from the reviewers and seeing how things play out. Use the proposal space wisely. So if you find that it's repeating information from another section, you can cut it from there and refer to that as needed. So an example of that would be going into too much detail within the proposal about the role of the team when that information is found on the contribution form. So if the information in the proposal isn't adding any new context and it's just repeating it, then it's just taking up space. Keep the background succinct. So it's not a requirement in this program to demonstrate that there's a specific level of disease burden or anything like that. That's not one of the criteria. It's really about identifying that need and framing the rationale around that and the target audiences. So yeah, outline the context in which your project is working and why your proposal is an important contribution. So yeah, setting up that rationale succinctly is an important thing. Be realistic. So fewer convincing and feasible objectives are better than many long list of objectives that don't have a lot of detail. Um, yeah. So a few other application tips. Grantsmanship can really, reviewers are reading a lot and that can, maybe change their mood while they're reading your application. So it's important to have colleagues and others read your application and keep the reader in mind. So these are multidisciplinary reviewers from outside Saskatchewan. So if you're mentioning, specific things in the Saskatchewan context that they might not understand, then it's important to give them enough information to understand what's going on. Study the review criteria that are outlined fully in the application package. So the review criteria you see in the package and the weighting is exactly what the peer reviewers will be using. So have a look at those. Have you left any gaps? And then step back and look at the application as a whole. So does the application as a whole tell this cohesive and logical story about what you would achieve with this grant and how you would go about doing that? Some common weaknesses, too much time spent on the background of the problem, methodology that lacks sufficient detail to assess information obtained will be useful. So it's really important to have strong methodology sections and analysis plans that have important details that justify your approach, such as a power calculation, if that's relevant. If there's key elements missing that could demonstrate the feasibility, that can be a downfall. Or if there's a method or technique outlined and it's unclear who has the appropriate expertise to do that. Lack of clarity on who could ultimately implement this solution and why it would be better than status quo. So that really ties back to the rationale and the target audiences. The information needed to assess one element is written about in a different section. So, if you find information that should be in the proposal in the timeline or the budget justification, it just kind of breaks up the logical flow and can be quite frustrating for reviewers. Yeah, so if having someone proofread it for logical flow and any errors, just writing generic knowledge mobilization strategies is a common weakness, and just emphasizing methods. So don't just rely on disciplinary jargon or assumptions. Make sure you're explaining your approach here. So at a high level, those review criteria are looking at the relevance and impact, methods and feasibility, and knowledge mobilization and potential for sustainability. So they're, as I mentioned, outlined fully in the application package. If you have any questions, I'm the main contact. Pawan will also be supporting me lots as the whole team as well. And then Tanya is your contact for anything RMS related. And yeah, some helpful links here. Sign up for a newsletter and yeah, you can find all our opportunities on our website. And that resources page has lots of information. And our YouTube channel has different how-to videos. And we'll also have this webinar posted within the next couple of days. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing here and open it up for any questions. And I'm sorry if you were sending things in the chat. I am just seeing it now. Okay, so I'll just answer just two quick questions in the chat, and then anyone's welcome to come online to raise their hand or just come off mute and ask a question. So there was a question if the second researcher on the team can also be the knowledge user. So um, yeah, there's all kinds of situations where people kind of fill multiple roles, but ultimately you have to have three people identified, two of them as researchers and one as a knowledge user. So um, yeah. Um, there's a question about finding research partners. So if that's other collaborators or knowledge users, maybe. Th- yeah, that we don't have a specific process for that. You can definitely have a look at the past research we funded, or reach out if there's a specific topic. We might be able to point you to some things happening in the province. And your institution probably has a lot of really great resources connecting to yeah, different collaborators or resources there. That's all the questions in the chat. Yes, Robert.
Thanks, Karen. Thanks for that presentation. So I had submitted to this competition last year, and I guess my question is, what kind of instruction or coaching are the reviewers being given in terms of what to expect from the proposals? I guess last year, some of the feedback I got, it seemed like I was being evaluated for a CIHR project grant, if that makes sense. But I'll leave it there.
Um, yeah, I mean, maybe we can follow up about more specifics, but the reviewers are given the same information you can see in the application package. Um, so they do have a good understanding that these grants can be a pathway to getting a CHR grant, for example. Um, yeah, if you have any concerns about specific previous reviews, we can always, make sure that well, we normally make sure there's new reviewers assigned to reapplications
Okay.
regardless, but yeah,
Yeah,
not
it was
sure if we're totally, yeah.
more a concern from my colleagues and I that reviewers were evaluating a grant based on, an application for $1 million versus $150,000. And maybe the
Mm.
standard was a little bit high comparatively, specifically around preliminary data, I guess. Um, but yeah, I'm wondering if the reviewers are given any context regarding pathways to the project grant, like you say, versus a fully fledged project grant.
Um, I mean, we like there's a real diversity of applications, so like we don't frame ours specifically within like a CIHR project grant, for example. Um, Yeah, I'm not sure I have a good answer to that, but they do have the same information as you do, and we don't like, um, yeah, so if there's some kind of disconnect, we can definitely make sure we're providing them with some kind of guidance. It sounds like maybe the disconnect is around what's achievable with that amount of money,
Yeah, yeah,
in that
that'd be
amount of
fair.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's helpful.
Okay.
And I'll just you just reminded me something I wanted to say that the time frames are optimistic time frames. If you are funded with a 1 or 2 year grant, we recognize that it will take longer, but if we give you a longer term, that it just sort of keeps extending. So, 1 year with an optimistic timeline is kind of and that is something that we share with the reviewers that we share with them and then sometimes comes up with discussion. They say this, I don't think this is feasible in 1 year. Is that okay with SHRF? And we say absolutely. If
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
in
Great.
the perfect world. Yeah.
Good. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Robert. Yuan?
Yep. Thank you for the presentation. I just have a quick, like, clarifying questions regarding the eligibility. So I'm
Mhm.
from Ontario-based biotech startup. So as long as we identify Saskatchewan partners, um, who's one researcher, one knowledge user, and one person living experience, all from Saskatchewan, then would we be eligible to apply with them?
I mean, we have like our mandate is like a provincial mandate to support research in the province. So,
Mhm.
um, if you know, in the case where there's collaborations and maybe the work of your organization can be brought to Saskatchewan, that's a great thing. Um, so yeah, so there could be that collaboration outside of the province, but the work happening would have be supported in Saskatchewan and have relevance to Saskatchewan.
Okay, so as long as we show that we are the work is done in Saskatchewan and is affecting Saskatchewan environment, we could be the co-applicants to this program.
You could be, yeah. And it just like it just should be evident that, sort of the goal is to benefit
Right,
Saskatchewan in the longer term, not just like, if it appeared that it was just like for convenience sake, we're doing this project
right,
here and then we're out. Then that just won't fit with the program overall.
right.
Yeah.
And there's no like process from you guys like matchmaking to Saskatchewan institutions, right? So we have to do sort of individually and then form a collaboration.
Yeah, if there's yeah, that's something we don't have a really outlined process for that. If there's a specific area, we could certainly point you to researchers that we've funded in the past and kind of highlight those projects as a starting point, or maybe connect you with some of the institutional contacts that might be able to yeah,
Okay,
would be
perfect. Great.
relevant. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. There was a question in the chat about if a postdoctoral fellow is eligible to be a principal investigator. Um, Sometimes those can get pretty tricky, but I mean, the short answer is no, but sometimes there's interesting. Yeah, if your job is a postdoctoral fellow, then you're not fully, um, you don't meet the definition of a principal investigator for sure. I guess is the short answer. Yeah. Any other questions? Well, thanks Michelle from Jim Pattison for joining us and Julia from Brain Canada. And yeah, if you have any questions, hey Michelle, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Um, yeah, I thanks for joining, and yeah, I'll sort of hang around for a few more minutes, but if you're off to something next, yeah, thank you so much for joining us, and yeah, thanks for all the questions.